Hey guys, and welcome back. My name is James, and today we're going to be making a very simple camera strap using these fabulous anchor links by Peak Design. I'll be using a 1.8 millimeters, I think it's 1.5 or 1.8 millimeter thick vegetable tanned leather strap. This should be a very easy build if you're looking to make a camera strap using these. Definitely this is the easiest method out there. A quick word about the anchor links by Peak Design. Now, Peak Design is a company that's been around for some time now, doing some great work in camera gear, and one of their most interesting products is this little, basically what they call anchor links. So this must seem relatively familiar. You just tie it onto your camera and it holds onto your camera like so. It is rated for up to 90 kilos, so it shouldn't budge anywhere. And all you do is you have your strap, and when you're ready to use it, you just simply link up, and yeah, that is very secure. It's not going anywhere, and this provides a great way of attaching straps or changing straps around from camera to camera. And since I often like to store my cameras and straps separately, and I hate having to take them on and off, I find that this is a great little tool. In one of these packs, you get 2 of these links as well as 2 extra little anchors. So you've got everything you really need for your everyday use. If you've got 2 cameras, it means you can have 2 of these on one camera, 2 of them on the other, and switch around quite easily. The downside is these anchor links are not cheap, and by the time you spent money on buying these, by the time you bought the strap, well, the cost of this is basically pretty much the same as buying the strap directly from Peak Design, so you may want to think about that before you get into this build. However, Amazon do have knockoff versions of these anchor links, which I'm sure would work just as well. So let's put this aside for now and start building the strap. I personally like my straps relatively short. Now obviously you could make it adjustable if you wanted to. I'm not going to do that. I'm really going to stick to the very basic. Now the length I need is about 85 centimeters long, but then I also want to add in an extra bit of length to be able to account for this, and that I measure it to be around about 5 centimeters in length, so I want to add a whole 10 centimeters to my piece. That brings us to a total of 95 centimeters long. So first things first, let's cut 95 centimeters. I've marked out 95 centimeters here, and I'm using a ruler along with the guide marks on this cutting board to be able to cut a nice straight line. There we go. I went ahead and skived the ends down here because this is where I'm going to be gluing against the other side of the strap, and I want to make sure that there'll be as little sticking out as possible to just try and minimize any type of rubbing that could occur during the wear. Using my cutting mat as a reference, I'm marking 10 centimeters here from the edge, and this is where my piece will be folded and glued to. I'll do this on both sides. Let's perform a quick test fit to see how it looks. Slide this in, fold this over, make sure we're centered, and I am happy with that. So I just want to mark out where my glue is going to come to, because that will also be a very important step. Just making sure that I have a reference here and in front of it. Good. And we'll do this on the other side as well. I'll be beveling all around my strap using a Barry King tool edge beveler. Now, for those of you who don't know what this is, this basically just rounds out all your edges and makes sure that the rubbing will be minimized whenever wearing this strap. I want to start off by beveling the inside of the fold, not where it's going to be glued up, because I won't have access to this later, so I need to do this now, and I don't want to bevel here and here on the inside, since I want a nice glue up, and if I bevel, it will look weird from the side. Now time for me to bevel the whole piece, and I always like to start with the flesh side, as I just find it easier this way around. As mentioned before, you want to bevel up to the glue line but no further, because again you want this to be nice and flush at the end. Then you can go ahead and bevel the whole piece on the top grain side. Now that the piece has been beveled, I'm going to burnish the inside of the fold. I'm doing this to start off with, as I mentioned, because I won't have access to this later, and I want to wait till it's fully glued up to be able to burnish the whole piece. So we'll start off by burnishing the inside here. For that, I'll be using Tokonole, which is my absolute favorite burnishing agent, as well as a 100% cotton rag, or in my case, it's an old cotton glove, and I find that's a really nice, useful tool to have around the shop, as you can put your fingers in the glove and be very, very precise. In this case, I'm not going to be using it as a glove, just as a 100% cotton tool that I like to use for burnishing. If you don't know what burnishing is, it is the process of applying heat through friction to the edge of your piece of leather to be able to flatten down those fibers and glue those fibers together. This will give you, first of all, a much nicer looking edge, but also a much more resistant edge in time. So I do recommend to go ahead and burnish. Do note, however, that this will not work on chrome tan leathers, or at least it might, depending on your leather, but you're going to have a much, much harder time doing that than if you're using good vegetable tanned leather. Since I'll be adding a crease line to my piece, I want to start by doing it now on the inside bend here, where I won't have access to this later. So yeah, if you're doing this, go ahead and do that here now as well. I am ready to start gluing things up. I'm using a water-based glue for this, which I can apply up to my glue marks on either side. You don't want to put too much, actually. It's good to have a spatula ready to be able to flatten things out, make sure you get full coverage, and get rid of any excess, because that will get in the way in next few steps, especially if you're trying to burnish your piece. So always make sure you've got something on hand that you can use to take off any excess. And yeah, it does help as well, a spatula, because it means you can get your glue everywhere on your piece and make sure it's evenly distributed up to your different lines. There we go. Perfect. Now I just want to let this one dry for about 5 to 10 minutes until it's completely dry to the touch, and then we're ready to glue up. The glue is now tacky to the touch, and it is time to insert my end pieces. Just make sure to get them in the right way up. Thread them in. There we go. Taking a bit more persuasion than I expected. One last check to make sure it's right way up. Go ahead and place it down, just covering that line that I'd made, just to make sure that it's not visible in the final piece. Go ahead and glue up nice and firmly. There you have it, all good and set. Now at this point, if you wanted to, all you'd have to do is pop in a couple of rivets, or just one rivet. I quite like the idea of 2 rivets just to make sure it's secure, and you'd be ready to roll. However, I am going to be doing stitches just part of the way up. I'll be using a traditional saddle stitch method, and this will give me probably just as much strength as rivets would, but I just like the aesthetics more. For this, I'll be using this really nice 0.5mm, so it's waxed linen thread from Maisie. That's the company that do it. It's a really nice thread, and it should go very nicely with the hardware here, which is also black. For your stitching, you can use whatever you want, but in my case, I'll be using these gorgeous Crimson Hides stitching irons. This is the 3.25mm spacing, which means that there is 3.25mm between each hole, and this is the French style irons, of course, which means that I get slanted holes instead of diamond holes, which is the Japanese variant, would use diamond holes. This is going to be the French style, and hopefully this will give me a very nice stitch. So I'll go ahead and do that and get back to you once that's done. There you have it, the straps are stitched up and ready to go. But I always like to finish up my pieces here, and these edges are much more raw than I would like. Now I've given them a very quick sanding just to get rid of any excess glue, but I am going to go ahead and burnish all the way along my edge and then add another one of these really nice crease lines. I'm not going to show you this on camera because, well, you know how this works. I'll just skip to the end. The strap is finished and I am very pleased with the result, but there is one last thing we need to do, and that is protect it. This is natural vegetable tanned leather. Now, as you can see already, just by handling it, it's gone a bit darker and it's taken on some little bits and pieces, and it needs protecting. For this, I'll be using this Saphir Pâte de Luxe, which is one of the best polishing creams that I can think of, and this will not only nourish the leather but also give it a nice coat of wax and polishing it. It will also darken it slightly, so yeah, looking forward to seeing that. Here goes. And there you have it. I'm very happy with the result. As expected, it did get a bit darker. I went ahead and gave it a good, strong buff, hoping that the heat from the buffing process would also burnish it slightly. I think I have achieved exactly the type of look that I was hoping for. I'm actually really excited to see how this is going to handle in real life and to see how it's going to wear and tear. I'll be using this on my main camera going on holidays, and hopefully it will get a nice amount of sun and should tan really nicely. If you have any tips or tricks you'd like to share with me or anyone watching about how you make camera straps, or anything you think could have been improved in this build, please let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. With that being said, thanks a ton guys for being here today. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed, hopefully you've learned something, and hopefully I'll see you very soon for some more leathercraft.